I have to try this, I'm sorry. That might work. That's something your boss can't do. Hi, I'm Rasmus Strand. I'll do this in English because my Danish is crap. And I do Lean. I do Lean for several of the business units in Sweden. And I have been doing Lean for 5 years, just about. And I was here once before talking to finance about Lean, which turned out pretty okay. And then I went to France and did a lecture on Lean, which was also very well received. And so now I'm back here. I was in Aarhus yesterday and doing this pitch too. We don't have a lot of time, so I'll hope to go through this, and if there are any questions at the end, I hope that you will speak up. At the very start, the very first slide said Lean, Sense and Report, which sounds very police state, but it is actually Lean, Sense and Respond. It is all about measuring and thereby finding the things we can do better. This is not a cost-saving measurement. It is a way that we can become better at what we do, right? And it is something that everyone has to do together. It's not something that managers do to people, and it's not something that you have to do lift to the managers, but this is something that each team do for themselves. So Lean is basically the Toyota production system. Now, Toyota wanted to make cars back around the Second World War, and Ford was the greatest automotive manufacturer in the world, but Toyota couldn't compete. No way. They didn't have the resources. So they found different ways of making cars. And this way of finding what is wrong, fixing root causes, doing continuous improvement, this turned into what we now call Lean. It is a collection of tools. You pick out different ways that you can improve the way you work, but you don't have to use all the tools if you don't want to. You pick the ones that fit you. And it is all about gaining the maximum customer value. This is all customer driven. Is the customer actually asking for this? Otherwise, why are we delivering it? It is removing waste. Are we doing stuff twice? Why are we doing it twice? Why can't we get it right the first time? And minimize the time between order and delivery, like cutting out all the waiting and all the extra work. Sense and Respond is the way that Fujitsu uses Lean. Now, Fujitsu and Toyota have been working together for 50 years, so we've learned a lot from the Toyota production system. And we have picked out some of the tools that we liked, and some were very sort of car-oriented, and we didn't feel we needed those. So we've picked out the ones we liked and made it something called Sense and Respond. That's why you see Lean, Sense and Respond all over the place. This is the foundation of this idea. This is what's called the Toyota Production Temple. And we use this in Lean, Sense and Respond to illustrate what is important. It starts at the bottom with Lean philosophy and leadership. This has to do with management. Management has to want you to do this with them. And it is a philosophy. It is a new way of thinking about how we do our jobs. It is not, you have to go and do this now, and you have to do this way. You know, that's not what this is. This is a way of looking at what we do so that we can do it better. It's all about visual management. It's all about showing progress and showing where we have vulnerabilities so that we can actually correct them. That's where these comm cells that have popped up all over this place come in. These are visual management tools to show us how well we are dealing with the stuff we're supposed to be dealing with, where we can improve and where we are excelling. And then standard processes. Now, if there's a group of 8 people, and we all do basically the same job, but we do it in 8 very different ways. If I figure out something clever, I can't actually share it with you because it doesn't apply to the way that you do the same stuff that I'm supposed to be doing. By using a standard process, we can easily learn from each other. We can maximize the benefits of new ideas. There are 2 pillars. Just in time, which is about delivering when we're asked, not over-delivering and not being late. To not hold massive stockpiles of stuff if we were a car manufacturer, but to actually build the car when it's being ordered. and built-in quality to do it right the first time. Toyota has the lowest percentage of all car manufacturers in the world of cars coming off the assembly line and going back to repair before they go to sale. Lowest in the world. Whereas other car manufacturers, they will send the car to inspection and go, oh, this isn't quite right, and send it back. Toyota just don't. This leads to something called continuous improvement, which is a bit nebulous, but what it means basically is that we don't settle. We find something that works, we make it better, and then we use that as the starting point to make the next thing better. We continuously improve, because we can't just stop and be, oh, done, because then we will probably be outmatched by the next guy. The top of this is something called operational excellence, which is a way of saying, don't try to be perfect, try to be better. It's about doing the best quality at the lowest cost in the shortest time. We can't expect you to do everything perfectly, but we can expect you to be better day by day. This is Henry Ford. Now Henry used to build cars, and he used to say, we can make the dandiest car, the fastest, or the cheapest. Which two do you want? And this is becoming ingrained in us. We think that this is actually true. That if you want something fast and you want it cheap, you're going to get crap. That's just how we think. Or if you want it, you know, a good quality thing, but you don't want to pay a lot for it, then you're going to have to wait. It's going to take a long time. Or if you're willing to pay, but you want it very fast, then it's going to cost you. If you want high quality and low time, you have to pay. But this isn't true. This is just the way he thought industries were. By using lean, and Toyota has proven this time and time again, you can actually deliver all three. You do this by reducing waste, by not doing things twice, by delivering when it is asked of you, and that way you can maximize your resources. Now to do this, there are several different tools. I'm just going to run through them very quickly so that you've at least heard the name, but I don't expect you to learn them today. The ComCell is the one that you're going to be starting with. This is one ComCell per group. And this is where your team meets to discuss what you are doing and how you can improve. It is a way of capturing where things are going right and where things are going wrong. And if you can capture that, then you can do better. It's all part of this visual management bit. Then we have load balancing, which is another lean tool when you actually go and ask people, how stressed are you at what time of the year, of the week, of the day even? And then find out, is anyone else waiting for this person's job, for this work to be done? And then try to balance it out so it's the same level all the time, instead of lots of stress sitting around, lots of stress sitting around. Then we have customer demand analysis and quality function deployment. These are tools that we can use to discover what is it that our customer actually wants. Not what he says he wants, because normally he doesn't actually know, but what he actually needs from us. Then we have something called creative problem solving, which is a lean tool to find out not that there is a fire, because we can probably figure that out, but what caused the fire. Because if we just put out the fire, all we are guaranteeing is that we'll have the same fire again. We need to figure out why the fire started and fix that. That's what creative problem solving is. Then standardized ways of working. That's what I mentioned before. To establish standards is a way that we can more easily share information between us. Then value stream mapping is a way of putting out visually what happens when, from order to delivery, for instance. When we get an order, who does what, at what point, how long does it take, how long do we wait until the next person takes over. Then we have a workplace audit, and the workplace audit is about you visiting other teams to make sure that they're on track with their lean, and you're on track with your lean, and what you can learn from each other. Because you are doing this together. It's not something that they're doing over there, you're doing over here, don't have any interaction. This also involves the managers actually coming to your ComCells and you going to theirs. Then we have 5S, which is a way to It's a tool for an organized workplace. And you can use this for a physical workplace, or a canteen, or a SharePoint. It doesn't matter. It's the same principle that applies. And finally, there's something called a playing game, which is an educational tool that we use to teach Lean, to see how this differs from the old industrial model. Now this is a comm cell. The comm cell looks pretty much the same wherever you go. If you go to the Japanese HQ, it looks like this. If you go to Sweden, if you go to Finland, it looks pretty much like this. And it has three parts. It has people, performance, and continuous improvement. You always start at the left and go to the right. During people, you talk about the team, contact information, who is here when, who is working on what. Performance is how we are doing. How well are we meeting our targets? How well are we meeting our quotas? Do we foresee any problems in the future? And finally, continuous improvement, which is triggered by this measuring. Do we see that we are having a problem coming up? What can we do about it? Because just sitting back and going, oh, we're sunk, doesn't actually help anyone. If we can capture this information, we can do better. That's what continuous improvement is about. This is a standard tool, so it's going to look pretty much the same, and then you tweak it so that it fits your group the best. Some people use more measuring tools, some use less, some use some documents, some others. It doesn't really matter. The structure is much the same. This is supposed to lead to something called lean culture. The way that we think about how we're doing our job, the way that we think about doing improvement, and how we think about continuous improvement. There are several different ways of building this, and this takes time. It's not something that you'll be doing this week, but when I'm back here in a year, or in 2 years, you will be well underway. Now, Charles Darwin didn't actually say this. This is Leon Megginson who says that Charles Darwin said this, but next time you see it, you know it's actually not Charles, who said that it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor is it the most intelligent, but the one that is most adaptive to change. This is so true for any business. If you cannot adapt to change, you are going out of business. And lean is a very, very good way of adapting to change. This is why Toyota is still around, even though it had 1/10 or 1/12 the capital of Ford when they started out. So how do we build lean culture? Well, there are lots of ways. The top left is a weekly lean information from the Gothenburg office. It is on the inside of a toilet door, so that when you're in the toilet, you're actually seeing lean, which I thought was clever. The top right is a project called Lean Cuisine. It turned out that the kitchen in one of the Stockholm offices was horrible, absolutely atrocious, a health hazard. So they used lean tools, 5S in this case, to actually handle how the kitchen runs, who does what when. And now it's not a sanitary hazard anymore. Education is key in all of this. We have started training some champions in different groups that will help you to learn how to use the comm cell initially, and then other tools as we move along. Visual management, as I mentioned before, is key. It is about showing this stuff. It's not something that you write in a report and then show your manager and then hide somewhere. This is something that you share, because if your team doesn't know it, no one knows it. Then standards. That's actually also a picture from Gothenburg. It is a standardized conference room. It says, this is what we expect to find in this conference room. Very simple. These and different things. We expect the chairs to actually all be here, no cups in here and all that stuff. It's a standard. We expect it and we follow it. It saves a lot of time. And finally, measuring and improving. If we don't measure it, we can't actually see it. If we measure something, we can say, we're actually in this much trouble, rather than going, I'm feeling a bit stressed. We can actually capture this information and share it with one another and with our managers. So, in summary, lean is how Toyota builds cars. And it's been used for 50 years. The sense and respond is how Fujitsu uses lean. One can say that lean is common sense put into code. It is the way that we approach these common sense goals and then put it to print. The sense and respond is continuous improvement and delivering what the customer actually wants, not necessarily what the customer asks for. And it's more than just tools. It is a culture. It is a way that we think about what we do. It's about thinking and acting differently. Are there any questions? Yes?
You just mentioned education of the Lean Champions.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, they've only gotten like 2 hours of training.
Yeah.
Is that good enough to implement it?
I would say that starting a ComCell you can do with a few hours. We're hoping that the champions can pull together, and if they have any questions, just send them to me and we can work something out. But getting on with the other tools will require a bit more time. But we start with ComCells and see how we go from there. And I think that most of them are well equipped to at least start, and if not, start asking the right questions. Yes?
In my team, I come from accounting. We have a council with accounting and salary, and basically everyone in the council do different things. So there's I think it's difficult for us to really get the optimization, because it's more like I'm talking to the accounts receivable accountant, and I'm talking to the accounts payable accountant, and so on. Can you on a general basic say something about how can you?
There's no lean tool for making organizational change, because that's a very broad scope. But what you can do is that, especially using ComCells, you can find the common ground, the stuff that you do together and that you all encounter together, and try to capture those things. In some of these teams, you might need 2 ComCells, one for that team and one for this team. And then whatever you do together, you make a 3rd ComCell for that. Some teams can work together using just 1 ComCell, and some you have to just split up. It depends entirely on the organization and about management and about how things change overall in the business. But I've seen lots of examples where you start with 2 groups who think they have very little in common, but when you actually start working with these tools, not just the ComCell but the other stuff, you find that you actually share more resources than you thought, and find ways to make those better, make those more optimal. Hope that answers at least a bit of your question. Yes?
This week I've using other ComCells and tried to support other teams, but I have a feeling that many of the teams are having difficult to find out what to measure.
Yeah.
And me as a lead champion going to another team, and I don't know very much the area they are working with, it's very hard to support the team and come up with some KPIs.
Yeah.
What's the best method to support the team?
This is also a bit broad. It's in Japanese. It's called Gembuchi, which is go see. When you go and actually take part in what other people do. Now this might take a year. You know, they could have an embedded champion for a year before they can figure stuff out. So what I like to do is have a champion in each different team, or at least someone that the champion can sit down with and have this discussion with. What is it that your manager wants you to measure? What is it that you feel that you want to measure? And see which kind of metrics you can come up with. There are some things that are very generic. In a group where you have people, which is most groups, you can probably do employee satisfaction, because that's something we all share. Like, are you feeling stressed? Well, yeah, probably. So that's one metric that everyone can use. And you can find out from what the manager is asking of that group, then you can sort of tweak that and go, is that a realistic KPI, or do we want to break it down into smaller ones, or is that part of something bigger that we don't want to take part of? This is an ongoing discussion. And KPIs, these measurement tools, are not set in stone. If you find that we need more of these, we need to break this down into different subtypes, then you do that. Or you find we don't actually use these anymore, just throw them out. So it's a learning process. It takes a while to get this right. Some things, like a service desk, is dead easy. It's really, really easy. But when you get to invoicing or development, then it becomes a lot harder. You have to think about it a bit more. But there are examples of good ComCells for those kind of groups too. I'm sure we can find you some. Yes, anyone else?
Må jeg ikke stille et spørgsmål? take this in English because I think that relates to the question I have to Rasmus, is how do you get to the point where this is not, for all employees, not just seen as another thing we have to do and a burden, but rather something that helps us, because I think that's part of the answer to your question.
I've seen examples of people saying that I don't want to invest in a console. If you invest 15 minutes in a console once every week, most people can spare 15 minutes in 1 week. It's actually doable for most people. And then when you find that August is half as hard as last August because of the stuff we've done up till now in the console, people go, there was a point to this. It takes a while to get there. Some you can see results immediately. You just start using these tools and you immediately catch on seeing, oh wow, we actually have something we can solve right now, and you fix it. And then you feel immediately energized. Whereas other teams, this takes longer. Depends on the team, depends on what kind of function they fulfill. But there are ways of tweaking this, but it does take time. It's not something that you get done in a matter of weeks. This is something that in a year, when you're all really lean, when you're all lean culture, you're going to look back and go, why did we do it any other way? Because this is just so much simpler.
But coming back to the question here, how do we get past
I would say that relying on the managers to figure out what your team needs to measure might be too time consuming to get right. I think that while their input is very valuable, what you do as a team is something that you know a lot better. So you can definitely start measuring stuff that you find interesting, and then if they have input, they can enter that. Absolutely. But you know what you do best. All you need to do is figure out a way to actually capture the information. Yeah.
Jeg tænker på, kan vi
There doesn't have to be. There doesn't have to be that your KPI is visible upwards all the way to the CEO's office. Because it is about what you do with your team to improve yourselves. If they have input, the management, top management, the CEO of the entire company has input on what they want to measure, they can absolutely enter that and you can start tracking that, because that might be really good input for you. But you know what you do. You know what it is that you can improve with your team. Start using that. And if the management goes, I didn't actually think of that, we should probably lift that up to our level as well, then they'll do that. But you should definitely get started and figure out what it is that your team does, and then let the rest come later. It doesn't have to be, all clear across the organization, but it can be just about your team.